Next point is constraint. MySQL constraint. The constraint in MySQL is used to specify the rules that allows or restrict what values data will be stored in the table. They provide a suitable method to ensure data accuracy and integrity inside the table. It also helps to limit the data type of data that will be inserted inside the table. If any interruption occurs between the constraint and data action, the action is failed. Type of MySQL constraint. Constraint in MySQL is classified into two types: column level and table level. In column level, these constraints are applied only to the single column that limits the type of particular column data. And table level constraint. These constraints are applied to the entire table that limits the type of data for the whole table. Constraints used in MySQL. The following are the most common constraints used in the MySQL: not null, check, default, primary key, auto increment, unique, index, enum, foreign key. Next point is primary key. MySQL primary key is a single or combination of fields which is used to identify each record in a table uniquely. If the column contains primary key constraint, then it cannot be null or empty. A table may have duplicate columns, but it can contain only one primary key. It always contains unique value into a column. When you insert a new row into the table, the primary key column can also use the auto increment attribute to generate a sequential number or that row automatically. MySQL automatically creates an index named primary after defining a primary key into the table. Since it has an associated index, we can say that the primary key makes the query performance fast. These are the create table syntax. Create table projects. Project ID int primary key, project name varchar 255, start date, date not null, end date, date not null. Next point is foreign key. The foreign key is used to link one or more than one table together. It is also known as referencing key. A foreign key matches the primary key field to another table. It means a foreign key field in one table refers to the primary key field of the other table. It defines each row of another table uniquely that maintains the referential integrity in MySQL. A foreign key makes it possible to create a parent-child relationship with the table. In this relationship, the parent tables hold the initial column values and column values of child table references the parent column values. MySQL allows us to define a foreign key constraint on the child table. Create table, project ID int auto increment, primary key, project name varchar 255, start date, date not null, end date, date not null. Okay, next point we'll check unique. A unique key in MySQL is a single field or a combination of fields that ensure all values going to store into the column will be unique. It means a column cannot store duplicate values. For example, the email address and roll number of students in the student info table or contact number of employees in the employees table should be unique. MySQL allows us to use more than one column that with unique constraint in a table. It can accept a null value, but MySQL allows only one null value per column. It ensures the integrity of column or group of columns to store different values into a table. Here is the query: create table test test.unit table. Test is the database. ID int 5 not null, auto increment. Second ID int 5 not null, ID 1 int 5 not null, test varchar 20 not null. Here primary key ID and second ID, unique ID, unique is ID 1, and engine INODB. Engine is equal to INODB. Okay, next query, not null, ensure that the values inserted into or updated to a column are not null. The not null constraint is a column constraint that defines the rule which constrains a column to have not null values only. Means if we try to insert the null value for that column, it will give you the error. It is create table training, employee ID int, course ID int, taken date not null, primary key, employee ID and course ID. This taken date not accepting the null value, we need to insert the proper date in that column due to that not null constraint. Next is check. Validate data before it is stored in one or more columns based on Boolean expression. Home SQL check constraint. SQL check constraint summary. In this tutorial you will learn how to use the SQL check constraint to validate data in a column or a set of columns based on Boolean expression. Introduction to SQL check constraint. A check constraint is an integrity constraint in SQL that allows you to specify that a value in a column or a set of columns must satisfy a Boolean expression. You can define a check constraint on a single column or whole table. If you define the check constraint on a single column, a check constraint check value for this column only. However, if you define a check constraint on a table, it limits value in a column based on values in other columns of the same row. Here is the query. Create table product ID int primary key, product name wildcat 255 not null, selling price numeric 10,2, check selling price is greater than 0. In that way we need to insert selling price greater than 0 always, otherwise it will not accept. The check constraint comes after the data type of the column. If you insert or update the selling price with a negative value, the expression selling price greater than equal to 0 returns false and the RDBMS returns an error. These are the check constraint. Composite key. A composite key in MySQL is a combination of two or more than two columns in a table that allows us to identify each row of the table uniquely. It is type of candidate key which is informed by more than one column. MySQL guarantees the uniqueness of the column only when they are combined. If they have taken individually, the uniqueness cannot maintain. Any key such as a primary key, super key, candidate key can be called composite key when they have a combined with more than one attribute. Composite key is useful when the table needs to identify each record with more than one attribute uniquely. A column used in composite key can have different data types. Thus, it is not required to be this same data type for the columns to make a composite key in MySQL. Candidate key. Any column or set of columns that are candidate to become primary key are candidate key. There can be one or more candidate keys in the table. If there is only one candidate key, it can be chosen as a primary key. Next point is indexing. Indexing is a data structure technique that allows you to quickly retrieve data from a database file. An index is a small table having only two columns. The first column comprises a copy of the primary or candidate key of the table. Its second column contains a set of pointers for holding the address of the disk block where that specific key value is stored. Index create query. Create unique index name on table name, column 1, column 2 up to we add multiple columns. Create unique index name on table name and column name that we need to add index. Here is another query to check the indexes. Show index from table name. What is clustered index? There is a two type of index, clustered index and non-clustered index. A clustered index is a table where data for the rows are stored. It defines the order of the table data based on the keys values that can be stored in only one direction. In the database, each table can contain only one clustered index. In a relational database, if the table column contains primary key or unique key, MySQL allows you to create a cluster index name primary based on that specific column. Next is what is non-clustered index. The index other than primary index, clustered index are called as non-clustered index. Index other than primary indexes. The non-clustered indexes are also known as a secondary indexes. They non-clustered index and table data are both stored in a different places. It is not able to sort ordering the table data. The non-clustered index is the same as a book where the content is written in one place and the index is at the different place. MySQL allows a table to store one or more than one non-clustered index. The non-clustered indexing improves performance of queries which uses keys without assigning primary key. Next point is view. A view is a database object that has no values. It contains are based on the base tables. It contains rows and columns similar to the real table. In MySQL, the view is virtual table created by query by joining one or more table. It is operated similarly to the base table but does not contain any data of its own. The view and table have one main difference, that the view are a definition built on top of the other tables or views. If any changes occurs in the underlying table, the same changes reflected in the view also. Here is a query. MySQL allows us to create a view in mainly two ways: MySQL command line client or MySQL workbench.